Well, happy Sunday, everyone. How we doing? Are we good? Awesome. So glad you guys are here today and you found your way in here. And I don't know if that was difficult for you or if it was easy. You're like, hey, they got AC, let's go. And if that's your reason, so glad that you're here. And think it's going to be a great morning. Maybe we could just start this way and just say, hey, I don't know if we have any of these people in here or not, but maybe we do. But if not, maybe we can just go ahead and just appreciate people who would be like linesmen or first responders or your neighbor, right? Or a good friend who came along and helped you at the right time. And so, yeah. So anyway, maybe electricity or not, you're here, right? And air conditioning or not, you're here. And water or not, you're here. And your team won or lost. We're not even going to get into that today. You're here, right? Debris or damage or not, you're here. And maybe just tell your neighbor close to you, hey, hey, we made it, right? Just give them a high five and say, hey, we made it, and here we are. So glad you all are here today. And because you're here today, I just think, and I think this happens every week. I mean, 6 years ago, before we ever came down here and joined the staff, Chris and I used to watch services back in North Carolina, and we would say the same thing all the time. We would say, okay, I kind of have a good feel for what's happening there, and really seems like, kind of God's doing something, and I enjoy the people there, but man, we got to get in that room. Like, I got to see what's happening in there and experience that. And I just remember the first time we ever came in here, and we went and sat over there where we're still sitting over 6 years later. And at one point during the worship, I got up and I go stand back there in the back of the room. And so we're having two different experiences, but we're both having the same thing. We're both just like crying and we're just so emotional. And we're like, man. And if you were here that day and I came out and I think I actually started the message. By the way, listen, I don't think it's ever a good idea on your very first day to be like your tryout sermon. So I would say no to that again. But, some of you put up with it, and here we are. But I just remember, like, saying, hey, listen, I don't know if you guys know this is happening or not, but, like, God's really doing something amazing in the church, and so you should be excited about that. And so I know there's people who have told me they're watching online. We believe them, right? Today. Hey, thank you guys for tuning in today and being a part of it. But, like, every time I come in here, like, it doesn't matter what the week has been like or what has been planned or how prepared anything feels or seems, like God does something amazing in this room. I don't know how to explain that, but I hope that that's your experience, and it has been. And if not, today would be that day where you go, oh, man, I don't know how to explain that. That was a terrible week. It was a bad couple of days, right? And I love that song that we picked out long ago, not today, where Matt's like, okay, listen, if it's a grave, then God can turn it into a garden. If it looks like ashes, then God can actually turn it into something beautiful. And so, listen, I'm glad that you're here today, and I think it's going to be a great time together. So anyway, real quickly, Matt rolled this out to you last week, but date night, and I think there's a graphic for you to get the details. Date night's something we started doing, I think in 2018, and it's just real simple. There's music, there's food, there's cool people, and, some kind of entertainment, and you get to hang out with people and kind of learn from the wisdom of others. And date night's on October the 18th, and I want to explain this because we picked October the 18th because there was no high school football game that weekend. And now there is, but it's not here, so I expect you to be here for date night, okay? So anyway, if you need to go support the team, do that, all right? And so October the 18th, $30 for a couple. I think it works best if you're married. Doesn't have to be that way. If you're engaged or you're dating with intention, then I think you could come and learn from some other people and check that out. But the theme that we're kind of rolling with this year on date night is, and what we're going to talk about and take next steps is actually living with the end in mind. And so I marry a lot of people, and I think in the last couple of years, it's just kind of become obvious to me that the majority, and not everybody, but the majority of people put all of the focus and the attention and the significance on the first day. And we haven't really thought about or planned or talked much about, like, the final day. And so that's what we want to talk about. We want to give some attention to that. What would it be like to actually have a marriage, a relationship that actually goes the distance? And then what would it actually take to make that happen? So you can sign up for that on the app. The app, instructions in the back of the seat. So go do that. Oh, one note. Hey, the building survived. Some of you who have been following the thing is that means we found a solution for it. Yeah. And so we still need to pay for it. So it's probably a good day to jump in on generosity. All right, today we're going to be in 1 John chapter 3 and a little bit of chapter 4, okay, where John's talking all about love. And if you were with us on the very first week, I kind of rolled out, and if you're not, you can catch up very quickly, but I said, I really kind of picked 1 John because in my mind, John talks all about love in this letter. And I thought, I think that's something that our world needs. I think it's something our community needs. I think it's something our church needs, and especially as, we got an eye on an election. Maybe if we all just kind of learn a little bit more about love, it'll just kind of make everything a little bit better. And then the more we got into it and we started looking at what John is writing to this church, a different theme actually emerged, and it's the one that we kind of just called the series, where John's entire reason to write is to give people confidence and to give them assurance and to just say, hey, listen, there are some things that you can know and you need to know with 100% certainty. And so in a world where we don't always know what to believe or who we can actually trust, John goes, listen, I want to tell you what you can know and what you can really count on. And many of the things that John has written about and will write about come with a qualifying test, if that makes sense to you. So today we're actually going to merge this idea that I think is central. Hey, this is how you know these things, with a very predominant theme, which is love. And we're going to kind of bring those two things together. And what can we know is true, and how can we know it? And just to kind of set it up, because it's just kind of a running theme for us, I came across something on social media this week. I just kind of want to show you this real quickly, and you can kind of check it out. But it comes from a zoo in China, and some of the visitors who were there in the panda exhibit started to hear the pandas barking, and they were panting, okay? And so someone goes, hey, I think that's a dog. All right? And so, of course, they denied it, and they said, no, that's a special breed, of the dog, the panda dog. And eventually they had to admit that they had literally dyed or painted these chow dogs for the panda exhibit. Now, most of us would say, okay, I see that. I can see that. And I don't really know who thought that was a good idea or how long you thought you could get away with it, right? But you go, okay, that's obvious, okay? So when John starts talking about love, you quickly realize, oh, what he's saying about love, like, if I do it the way that he says it should be done, like, that's impossible to fake. There's no way you're going to get away with that. And so the question, like, what's true about love? Where does it come from? How do I know if I have it? And how do I actually know how to give it? Because sometimes, and I think especially true when it comes to love, we like to, quote, dress up a few things that we call love, and maybe it's actually not love at all. So I think many of us have misunderstood, it's okay, everything's okay. I think many of us have misunderstood, or I think we need to be reminded, or most definitely what I wanted to do today is to actually see the connection to how all of the loves work together, okay? And we come to the heart of all the love stuff in chapter 3 and 4. And when I say all the loves, I want to explain that because this is going to be very, very simple today in the end. And some of you are probably going to walk away and go, you know what, I feel like I've heard some of this stuff before. And that's okay. Because if you took the 15 or 20 minutes it takes to read the entire book of 1 John, you would probably get to the end of it and you would go, I feel like I've read this already. Because John seems to be all over the place when he's writing this thing, and especially here in chapter 3 and 4. It's like his ADD just kicked into full gear, okay? And I understand John's probably writing on a piece of papyrus, and he can't just scratch things out and easily erase and move things around. I get it. But he'll take these ideas, and then he'll just run with them, and then he'll shift gears and he'll introduce a new idea, and then it's like, oh, I forgot to say that about the old idea, and he'll just throw it in there, and it's like, okay, let me just try again and say it just a little bit differently in case you didn't understand. So that's kind of the way he writes the whole thing. When you look at the totality of John's message, there are 3 ways that he actually talks about love. And I want to roll them out to you, and then we'll go back and kind of make sense of it all. But I think the way to set this up is just for us to read in chapter 4, starting in verse 7. Now, last week, Matt read chapter 3:16. What we're getting ready to read is where John goes, I think I should explain that more fully. And then he goes into greater detail. It just says this, friends, let us love one another because, and would you say these 4 words with me? Because love from God. And everyone who loves has been born of God and knows God. The one who does not love does not know God. Because, would you say these 3 words? Because God is love. Okay, great. God's love was revealed among us this way. God sent his one and only Son into the world so that we might live through him. Love consists in this, all right? Not that we love God, but that he loved us, and he sent his Son to be the atoning sacrifice for our sins. So friends, listen, if God loved us in this way, we also must love one another. And I want us to wrap our minds around the three loves that John talks about, and then we'll go back to chapter 3 and try to land somewhere. Number one, you have to understand is that John talks about the love that God has for us. Okay, the love that God has for us. And we know that because, he says, his Son, okay, Jesus, came to this earth, laid down his life so that you and I could have life. That's number one. Number two love that John talks about is the love that we have for God. And he says, and we know that when we stay close to him. Okay, we have a relationship with him. We remain in Jesus and we let him lead our lives. And then John introduces this third love where he says it's the love that we have for others. And this is the part that we tend to disconnect from. That when we actually stay close to Jesus, the result, according to everything John says here, is that we will love other people and we will even sacrifice for those people. And that's where we're going to go next week. But let me just add this. The more that I kind of hung out in all of this stuff that John's talking about, and I'm reading it, and I'm praying over it, and I'm meditating on it, and I'm going, listen, what is John really trying to communicate? The more I started to see it differently, okay? Maybe John didn't have undiagnosed ADD like I think he does. I think what John wants us to see is that none of those three loves stand on their own. Okay, they're all connected. They're all dependent on the other one. And so let me say it this way for our purposes, and I just threw it into a note, that the love of God, okay, the one that comes down to us, the love of God and our love for God are the foundation and the motivation to love others. And I just want you to think about that for a minute, because if we get any of it out of order, we've entirely missed what John's trying to communicate and how it works. Number one, the love God has for us, right? And Matt did an amazing job last week in communicating, yes, God loves us, right? And yet that's not just something that God does. Okay, we read that's exactly who he is, that God is love. And I don't know how I did this, but I stumbled across an article, I think it was written 10 years ago, from the Huffington Post, and it's actually titled, How to Love, 6 Ways Not to Love, and then 8 Ways to Love. And again, keep in mind, this is not a Christian author, it's not a Christian perspective, but most of them, when you read them, you go, oh, that's pretty good. And I bet you didn't know that came from the Bible. That was really good, okay? And then you get to number 8, the last thing, and it says this, love is God, and God is love. And in case you think that sounds cool, it's just not true, okay? Love is God, it says, and God is love. It's really very popular right now to say what God is like and to speak very definitively, even from people who have absolutely no relationship with God whatsoever. There's this growing idea, and it's been happening for years and years and years, that because God is love, then everything that looks like love or seems like love or I think should be love or it comes from my understanding should then be something we love because it's like God loves that. To be more clear, what's happened is that love has become a god, if that makes sense. Okay, so again, there's this growing. It's like a prevailing thought that we should love anything. Not anyone, but anything or any thought or any process or action. And then if we do that, we're acting like God. It entirely misses the point of what John is saying. That love does not define God. God defines love. See, when love is actually our starting point, we misunderstand God. Right? Because now God has to actually fit into what we think and what we feel and what we believe. So love does not actually inform our view of God. God actually informs how to love. I need like 2 or 3 people to go, I understand what you're saying. That makes sense, okay? Okay, God is love. We got it flipped around where we say, okay, love is God. And so instead of God being the one who defines it, we're going, okay, I think love that what I love must be, that's God. And it's entirely backwards. The article, by the way, finishes with closing tips on learning to love. And it just literally says this, I quote, learning to love yourself is foundational for being to love others. And if you're like, okay, I'm going to write that down, don't write that down. It's not true. The more you learn to be kind and gentle with yourself, which you should do, rather than judgmental and rejecting, that sounds bad, the more loving you will be with others. And I just want to say that that kind of thinking or advice is completely out of order with what John presents here. Because the truth is that when we come to realize, okay, God loves us, and it is because it's who he is, right? Then we respond to that by loving God in return. Those are the first two loves. Okay, when we have that down, okay, the way we prove that we love God, according to John, is by loving other people. That absolutely all of the loves are connected and interconnected and dependent. It actually is a little bit about how, reminds me about how it works around our community, at least for me, when I'm driving around the community. And, I live in Kingsland, and the church is in Kingsland, and yet when I walk out into the lobby, I look across the street, and I'm looking at St. Mary's. I don't know if you guys knew that or not. It was very confusing for me. And I'm constantly in one town, and then I'm in the next town, and then I'm back in the next town. And you can live in Kingsland and shop in St. Mary's, right? Or you can live in St. Mary's and actually go to school over there in Kingsland. And it would be so much more helpful for me if there was a line right down the middle. And it just said, you're on this side, and you're doing that thing, and you're on that side, and you're doing that thing. I don't always know, by the way, and maybe it's just me, and I'm still getting used to things after 6 years, but I don't always know when I'm in Kingsland and when I'm in St. Mary's. I just know that this is the area where I live, and it's where I shop, and it's where we do things, and it's where we work and have relationships. I drive from one area to the next area just because they're closely connected, and I don't differentiate. In some way, that's what John's trying to communicate. Again, back to the sentence, love of God and love for God are the foundation and the motivation to love others. With that basic understanding, just let me take the final 12 minutes and 52 seconds, just so you know I'm not really paying attention to that, and see if we can find what connects the three loves. Because I think there's a thing that John writes here that connects, like what holds all that stuff together? And I want to go to chapter 3 and verse 18 because right in the middle, listen, all of the first part of chapter 3 is love. Chapter 4 is love. And right in the middle of that long conversation, John talks about the heart. And I assume he does this on purpose because, and I think, at least for me, most of the time when we think about or we talk about love, we are thinking and we are talking about feelings. So I love how John says this in verse 18. Hey, little children, or hey, he just considers himself to be an older, wiser mentor. Let us not love in word or speech, but in action and in truth. Hey, when John talks about love in this letter, he is predominantly talking about our actions. Yes, you need to have proper thinking and adjust your thoughts, but it is so that you can actually love better. Can't just talk about loving, can't just feel loving. He says in 19, this is how we will know that we belong to the truth. And we will reassure our hearts. Your heart, there's something about your heart that needs some reassurance, okay? How we will reassure our hearts before him because, okay, sometimes our hearts condemn us. And maybe I'm reading too much into it. I'm willing to say this, just trying to make it fit. I want us to talk about the heart. And I want to just do a crash course on a couple of key concepts throughout the scriptures. Because if your heart's not good, then you can't actually know God, and therefore you can't love people. So can I just do a really quick overview of our hearts? Let me do it this way. Written by Solomon, okay, Old Testament king, very wise. When he's ready to pass on what he considers to be the most important advice he can leave with his son, he says this in Proverbs 3. Hey, listen, guard your heart above absolutely everything else because it's the source of life. Okay, you got a heart, right? You got blood, it's beating. It's like you got feelings, you got emotions, you got attitudes, decisions. Everything is connected right here in your heart. The soul, the mind, the body, okay, the core of who you are. Your heart has healthy rhythms, hopefully, and resting period. Some of you are relaxed right now, okay, and that's because of your heart. You're a little too relaxed, all right? So Let's come back here. Some of us have had too many coffees or a Red Bull, and we're like, oh, we're going. He doesn't say, listen to what he doesn't say. He doesn't say, hey, listen to your heart. He doesn't say, trust your heart. He says, hey, protect it and guard it, because absolutely everything flows from there. The problem is, as we fast forward to the book of Jeremiah, he says, okay, listen, the heart is more deceitful than anything else. It's incurable, right? Who could really understand it? I mean, listen, nothing in your life will get you in more trouble than your heart, if you didn't know that, okay? Write this down. You cannot trust you, okay? You should not trust you. Like, your heart is sick, it's deceitful. You say, well, what do you mean? Okay, listen, at some point in your life, maybe you're doing it right now, you told a friend, you go, look at him, he's so cute, isn't he? And I know he lives at home and he doesn't have a job, but listen, I think he's the one. And your friend goes, well, what is your heart telling you? And you go, well, we have a song, and I'm going to go with my heart on this one. And then you're looking back going, I think that was a really bad decision. You're going to buy something, right? And honestly, you don't really need it, and you can't afford it. But you think, okay, I think I deserve this. And then you found some counsel in your life who said, hey, man, what does your gut say? And now you're looking back thinking, I don't think that was the right thing to do. Jesus, by the way, he talked about this all the time, that absolutely everything that we say, everything we think, everything we feel, everything we do, Jesus said, it originates in your heart, and it just kind of comes out of you. That includes, by the way, the decisions that we make about ourselves, but also the way that we feel and treat other people. So the heart actually becomes essential to receive God's love and then to return it, and the heart becomes essential that makes it capable for you to love other people or to actually resist loving other people, right? The bad heart that we have that's full of feelings, listen, it can't be trusted. It can't be trusted you to even tell the truth about other people, right? And haven't you ever looked at someone in your heart, like you felt it deep in your heart, like who do they think they are? You ever had somebody who just like offended like your personal system of justice, and you're like, man, I see what they're doing or what I think that they're doing, and of course we compare that to what we intended to do, right? And even though we probably ended up doing the same, like I intended to do this, but they did that. We might actually willfully neglect others, even take advantage of others. Some of us even abuse other people, which are all indicators of a lack of love. And the place where we found our justification to do that, or our permission to mistreat someone or think poorly about them or act wrongly towards them, it came from our heart. Which is why your feelings, okay, could never be the Lord or the leader of your life. I mean, here at the end of the service, when I get done, or if Matt's teaching, or Dan, or April, or whoever comes out here, at the end of the service, in some way, we're going to try to funnel everything to go, hey, listen, we're going to ask you to do more than just try harder. We're going to ask you to do more than just, okay, could you just tweak it a little bit and make some adjustments to your life? No, what we do is we talk about surrendering your life or trusting your life, because your heart is always battling to stay in charge. And something's wrong, right? We all have to step back at some point and go, okay, I know it, you're right, it's wrong, because the heart of the problem is the heart. And our hearts condemn us. Our hearts make us feel guilty. But that's only part of what John says, right? That when we could come to realize what our hearts are capable of, there's this amazing promise, he goes on, for God is greater than our hearts, and he knows all things, right? You have to understand all the talk about love is deeply connected to our hearts, but where God is and wants to do something greater is right here in your heart. And the really amazing news is that even while you were self-centered and being led by your heart, or even while I was over here on a one-track course going, that's what I want, that's what I'm going to do, I think I make a good leader. While we were being led by our hearts, God was working an entirely other plan in another way. He actually began forecasting it and foretelling it, that in Jesus, what the remedy would be. It says it this way in Ezekiel 36. Okay, listen, here's the plan. I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit within you. So I'm going to remove your heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh. I'm going to place my spirit within you, And then you'll be able to follow my statutes and carefully observe my ordinances. So God says, look, okay, old plan was for you to trust your heart and to trust your feelings, knowing that you're entirely incapable of being a good leader. So I'm going to reach into your heart that he calls a heart of stone, and I'm going to rip it out and literally replace it with the heart of my son, Jesus, and the Spirit. Now, we're going to have to remove the old version of you and replace it with something entirely new. I mean, we had a really interesting summer around our house and our family, you know, and it started back at the end of June, and we've got, you know, health things, and we've got church flooding, and we've got you know, trees falling on cars and all that kind of stuff. It just happened in a short period of time. And then I don't know how it works, but all of the appliances in the house, they start to conspire together. Has anybody ever experienced this before? And so what kicked off the summer was, okay, the washing machine is dying, and then we ended the summer with the dishwasher dying. You know, it's just like there's just kind of, these things just happen all the time. And so we've kind of held these things together for years. You know what I'm talking about? Like put a little duct tape here, and, you know, I don't think that part is really necessary because I can't get it back in there. You guys had that before? I don't know how that happens, but... So we just, you know, we get by for a while, and it's kind of hit and miss, and we know we have problems, and so we troubleshoot, and I read things, and I watch YouTube videos, and we call somebody, and they come and they do a repair, and, you know, okay, I think we got it, and it can go for a little bit longer, and, oh, that's how much the new part costs. Well, let's buy the used part, and then that doesn't really work out very well, and, you know, you're making improvements. You're really just tweaking things, and you're really not getting it done in the end. And then finally, it's like, hey, we got company coming. We have got to find a solution. These dishes aren't going to wash themselves, okay? And I can't keep wearing the same thing over and over again. Eventually, somebody goes, you know what? That dishwasher cannot be trusted any longer. Now, in our house, for some reason, they put the dishwasher in first and built everything in the house around it. You're like, I don't know how we're ever going to get this thing out of here. So it's a major thing. You're literally going to have to go in there and rip the entire thing out of there. And let's just it's finally time to do it. We got to have someone we can trust. We rip the entire thing out of there, and we're going to take the new one that we feel like we can trust, and we're going to put it in its place. This is what God's kind of describing here in some way. When it comes to our hearts, we're not talking about a renovation. We're not talking about some small improvements. It's a bulldoze and start over. And so John continues this thought in 21. Listen, friends. If our hearts don't condemn us, okay, if we can get to that point where we don't feel that way, could you imagine that? He says we could have confidence before God. Okay, in other words, when you're no longer being controlled or being led or being manipulated by your own heart, you're now freed up to actually receive what God has for you. And some of us go, okay, I get it, I understand that, but listen, I've done some things, okay? Well, yeah, we all have, okay? And I love what Paul, follower of Jesus, writes later in Romans 8, where he says, listen, there's now no condemnation for those of us who are in Jesus. So listen, Jesus, okay, he's going to pay for your choices. He's going to pay for my decisions. He's going to cover over the sins, okay? You don't have to carry that anymore and keep condemning yourself. Jesus goes, listen, it's not there anymore. It's been removed. Verse 22, with that in mind, you could receive whatever you ask from him. Okay, finally the good part, right? But because we keep his commands and do what is pleasing in his sight. Listen, okay, in context, what John's talking about is that every one of us who prays with the heart of Jesus, and listen, don't forget, like how Jesus prayed. If you know about Jesus, okay, and his night where he's betrayed and he's in the garden and he goes to pray and he's getting ready to head to the cross and he knows that he's in the final days and kind of what's ahead of him. And you remember how Jesus actually prayed there? Like, it was very personal. It was, okay, listen, Father, if there's another plan, this is a good time for it, okay? If there's another way to get out of this, like if this is a way for this not to happen, then that's what I vote for, okay? I'd just like to let you know that. But that's not where he ends, right? He then goes, okay, that's what I want, but listen, it's not what I want in the end, but what you want. Okay, not my will, but your will. That right there is a prayer that I think God answers every single time. And you know what? I don't generally know what God's will is. I don't know about y'all. So I need to pray a lot. And listen, God should be up there right now having conversations about you going, listen, this guy will not leave me alone right now. It's like how we talk about the rain. You're like, seriously, again? Here again? And listen, if it's me and my kids are coming to me, I'm like, listen, stop. This is the last time you're going to ask. But that doesn't seem to be the way that works with God. It's like, hey, you just keep praying, keep coming, and we receive what is his will. And then he adds this, if we keep his commands. Okay, so we're walking in step with God. Final question, so how do I receive God's love? How do I get this new heart? How do I receive what God has for me? How am I actually capable to love other people? And if God is actually greater than our hearts and he's offering a new one, like what's our part? He says in verse 23, okay, this is it right here. This is the command. That we believe in the name of his Son, Jesus Christ, and love one another as he commanded us. John goes, hey, listen, pay attention. Here's the thing that holds everything together. Believe in Jesus and then love others. You know, Jesus got asked this question by people, hey, Jesus, what might be like the most important command that I could know and maybe follow? And, you know, these are people who have grown up with hundreds of them in their lifetime. And so Jesus goes, listen, I think I can boil it down to one for you. And it literally became 1A and 1B, so to speak, okay? Jesus goes, listen, really it's simple. Love God with everything you have, and, okay, kind of goes together, love other people. Similar to what John is communicating here. I mean, they can't be disconnected from one another. And the way that you love God specifically here, according to John, is to believe in Jesus. And we say it all the time. I'll say it one more time. There's a difference between believing in and believing in terms of trusting in. A couple of weeks ago, you know, I said, hey, I believe there's a team that plays in Atlanta. I believe they play at Mercedes-Benz. I believe they got red and black uniforms and that kind of thing. And I was this close to having to eat those words today because I said I don't believe in them, right? And then they almost beat my team, and I was like, crap, man, I don't want to go out here and have to talk about this. So then I was proved right. I still don't believe in them. When we talk about believing in Jesus, we really mean believing on Jesus. We're talking about trust. You know, so our staff around here, you know, we do a lot of work here throughout the week. And I know sometimes you wonder, like, what do you all do up there? And who are those people? And that's because you just don't know. And that's fine. But we have a lot of meetings, okay? We have a lot of conversations, and we're constantly trying to learn and try to, you know, get better as leaders. And you know, we talk a lot about how God has entrusted the church right now, at least in part, to our care, and that means you all to our care and at this time. And we do talk about this. Hey, that's a responsibility that we don't take lightly. And most of the time, I would say most of us feel very underqualified for that. But there's a lot of conversation and meeting about how things get done, if that makes sense to you. Like, how do we actually utilize and kind of steward, you know, the resources that we have and you all as a human resource, and how do we best accomplish the mission and actually get people moving in that direction? So what we're constantly battling with and against is trying to balance things that we ask of you. Okay, and I know some of you go, man, you ask something of me every single week. And so I want to balance what we ask of you, which is what I consider to be like the ultimate ask of you. Meaning, I think it's possible that some of us come in here and week after week, and what we hear after a while, and our takeaway is, okay, I got to get in a group. Okay, takeaway is I got to get on a serve team. Okay, I need to give financially. And even though I would say this is about the most low-key approach I've ever been a part of, and we're going to find a way to remedy that. Just put a pin in that. But I think you can hear all these things you need to do that are being asked of you. Hey, you know, some people, can you move services? Can you park in a different location? You know, those kinds of things. And every single one of those things is important, but I never want those asks, okay, to become bigger or occupy your mind or a place in your heart more than the greatest ask, which is, do you believe in the name of Jesus? Right? Do you believe in the name of Jesus? Okay, maybe you believe that he's there. Okay, I got it. Maybe you believe that Jesus was a guy, maybe that he even died, but you don't yet trust in Jesus. We haven't quite yet leaned our life up against Jesus. So what we're talking about is that we surrender to his leadership or his lordship, and then there's this new heart, okay, the heart of Jesus. Again, the order here, again, is crucial. That believing in Jesus actually precedes loving the way that John describes here. And let's just finish up, because I know some of you will find it incomplete, this verse. He has this: the one who keeps his commands, okay, we're loving God or believing in Jesus and loving people, remains in him, he in him, and the way we know that he remains in us from the Spirit he has given us, okay? He's just saying, look, when you surrender your life, and let me actually say your heart, to the leadership and the heart of Jesus, okay, now your heart actually beats for him and for other people, and God has given a Spirit inside of you who gives you everything you need for everything you need to do. No love stands on its own. Okay, they're all connected and dependent, and here's the sentence: love of God and love for God are the foundation and motivation to love others. So I think about this from time to time, and a lot of it's just like personal introspection, is that, okay, when we don't love, or when we can't love, or when we say, you know what, I'm not even going to try to love, always makes me wonder if I've actually ever truly known God and his love. You know, because sometimes we try to love people and we haven't yet fully understood or received the love of God through Jesus. And, you know, we don't really do like invitations around here. We've tried a few things from time to time, and might be a little bit different than the way you grew up. And if you grew up in church, you know, you're like, okay, that's not the way we did it when I was. If you're new, you go, this is just the way we do it. So roll with that, okay? So one of the things that I've just never been able to personally get on board with is the concept of asking Jesus to come into your heart. And this week, I think it's become even more that way for me, because we do not subscribe to the idea that you invite Jesus into your heart to make it better. Right? I'm not going to invite Jesus to come in here and maybe just kind of like move a few things around and help me. What I mean is we invite Jesus to come and take out our heart entirely and replace it with his heart. New. Right, capable of actually loving God in return and loving the people around us. And, you know, Matt used a C.S. Lewis quote last week, and so I read books too. I'm going to give you a C.S. Lewis quote. Love this one. He's speaking here on behalf of God. He says, "Give me all of you. I don't want so much of your time, so much of your talents and money, so much of your work. I want you." Okay, all of you. I'm not come to torment or frustrate you as a natural man or a woman, but to kill it. No half measures will do. I don't want to only just prune a branch here and a branch there. Rather, I want the whole tree out. Hand it over to me, the whole outfit. All of your desires, all of your wants, your wishes, and your dreams. Turn them over to me. Give yourself to me, and I will make of you a new self in my image. Give yourself, and in exchange, I will give you myself. My will shall become your will, and here it is, my heart shall become your heart. So the answer for everybody, regardless of who you are today, is the heart. And for some of us, we hopefully would say, okay, for the very first time in your life, you would go, okay, listen, I'm willing to admit that you might be onto something. You might be right here. Like, I've looked a lot of places. I know that I've followed my heart. I've let it lead me. And you know what? I'm willing to say it didn't turn out. It didn't turn out. Listen to what John's saying here. God is love. You can love him, okay, because he actually took the first step towards you in your direction. He's saying, look, okay, would you take out the heart of stone, as he describes it, and replace it with the heart of Jesus? And it's very simple, right? When I say, hey, this is how we do invitations, it's you and God, okay? You just simply admit, you know what? For the longest time, or all this time to my life, I have been the king of my own heart. And you literally say it with your own mouth, your own words, not my words. You're surrendering your will to God's will. First service, we baptize someone. Excellent picture of what it looks like to surrender to the leadership of Jesus. But if you're over here and you're not new heart, you're like, okay, I've done that before, then you're renewed heart. Okay? Those are the options. God, give me a new heart today. Or God, okay, I come in here every week and I get a chance to recenter and I get a chance to refocus and I get to, lean my life up against Jesus and see where I don't measure up. And so I'm asking for a renewed heart today. And if that's you, I think in the next few minutes, you should probably take communion. And it's in the back of the seat in front of you. And you should just have your time to thank God for what he has done in your life, that he promises to keep doing it over and over again. And then we're going to respond in worship, and I really expect you to give it your very best today. So God, today we say thank you for these words of John. And sometimes he can be a little scattered, and I feel like that's me today as well. So God, take my words, help them make sense today. God, we truly do want to receive the love that you have for us. God, help us just to understand that more and more. God, help us just to receive the love that you have for us so that we can love you in return. God, we thank you for Jesus, who truly shows us what love looks like. God, help us to model him as we seek to love other people. And in the end, God, hopefully some of us, for the first time ever, would come to understand what's happened or is happening in our life, that, God, we need a complete renovation of our heart. Maybe we would even be able to surrender that to you today. God, for others of us today, we ask you to renew it. God, give us your heart for you and for other people. And we pray these things in your name. Amen.